This is the Bible of the electrogenic cell. It's not just the best book ever written on the subject, it's the only book ever written on this subject. Brought to you by supporters of Christ.
All right, y'all supposed to be sleeping now. I don't know who's up. You better not be from America. You better not be from America. Is you supposed to be asleep? Smack, you supposed to be asleep. Smack, you supposed to be asleep. I'm supposed to be sneaking. I'm supposed to be sneaking in and out of this book. I'm supposed to be sneaking in and out of this book like a like a cat burglar. I'm supposed to be sneaking in and out of this book like a cat burglar right now. Man, I had already started my morning prayer right there, right? That was a little workout. What you mean you need that book? How you don't got this book? We on week 11. we on week 11 right now in this book. How you don't got this book? You supposed to have this. Yeah, you supposed to have this. All right. All right, so week 11. Now that we got kind of a loaded program, right? We got our anabolic program or class, right? We got our water, right? Our water class. We got our protein class. We just started orientation on evolution and molecular machine and you know body plan, like the whole. So it feels good. You know, and it's probably going to stay that way, right? It's probably going to stay that way, meaning I think when we go through the same book day after day after day, we make faster progress, right? We make faster progress, but I think it can become a little monotonous with the redundancy. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, so I think it keeps all of the material fresh when we can move to different topics, but stay on course because we do have an overall blueprint with what it is that we're doing, right? So week 11, day 1, we on page 352. Week 11, day 1, page 352. Right? And for the protein and the water classes, those are kind of support classes off of this curriculum. So I haven't necessarily built out as organized of a schedule, but because there are 4 books for the evolution course, we'll have a whole like syllabus, you know, we'll have a whole syllabus designed and laid out so that way people can figure it out. But for now, just make sure you get your books. All right. Week 11, day 1. The Iron Covenant, blood, breath, and the circuits of heme. Blood, breath, and the circuits of heme. So we're digging into. All right, so we have some new family, right? Here, let me do this better for you, Jamal. Yeah. Well, over here, this is Jed School. That's the name of the platform is Jed School. So typically, it's more like, organized and structured classes. You know what I'm saying? But you could jump in anywhere. You could jump in anywhere because we have the books. And so the books allow you to kind of go at your own speed and your own pace. The videos just kind of help out with the material that's in the books. So let me show you the book for this particular class. Let me bring up Amazon. And shout out to Amazon for getting their act together so quickly. Yeah, shout out to Amazon. Amazon was crashed yesterday. That was a little crazy. That was a little crazy. And then, we still got another class coming up too. We got Black's Anatomy coming up. So you're going to need your Black's Anatomy. So technically, don't feel away because you coming in on week 11 in this class, but we have classes starting up all the time. You know what I'm saying? And then we have some classes we on week 1. I think protein we probably like on week 2 or something like that. And so there's always stuff starting up. I thought y'all was gonna still be. Nobody's supposed to be awake right now anyway. Yeah. So all love. If you happen to, you know what I'm saying, doze back off. I super appreciate, love you just for even catching the all right, so these are, let's find, there we go. So this right here is the book for this class. This right here is the book for this class. Right? All right. So let's jump into some of this work because I'm trying to get this class in before I have to take my little ones to the school bus. All right. I was up all night typing. So I felt like getting a class in. I was up since, I don't even know, since maybe like 11:30. Yeah, I was up since 11:30 typing. Yeah, some days I can get 10, 15 hours in typing. Yeah, so I can do 80, 100, 120 hours a week typing. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, we're going straight to the whiteboard, right? We're going straight to the whiteboard. And I was kind of inspired to jump back into the Melanin is Anabolic class because we had been in our protein bag a bit, right? We had been in our protein bag a bit. And week 11, day 1, kind of, it takes us into a nuanced space in the protein, and I'm really trying to bring home to people that pigments are part of the protein family, even though more complex. But this when you're speaking about molecular machines need power. They need power. They need I'm not going to say constant information, but they need operation. So they need energy and information, which makes pigment super important, because the more complex the system, the more complex, So let's jump into hemoglobin, right? Hemoglobin and myoglobin. Let's jump into hemoglobin. Right? Hemoglobin and myoglobin. This is the family that makes respiration work. Right? This is the family that makes respiration work, because you have heme, which is the key unit of hemoglobin, right? And so hemoglobin is in the blood, but the individual units of heme are in the mitochondria. Hemoglobin and heme, right? Hemoglobin makes up your blood. It is a dynamic pigment. But heme, the units that make up hemoglobin, are in each mitochondria, right? Very important. Very important little key piece of information right there. We have to put that in our bag. Yeah, we got to put that in our bag.
Rise up, get healthy, let the truth ignite. Dr. Inky always bringing dark to light. See more, see your system.
All right. Yeah, I had to write that down for myself. I had a momentary splash of genius. Remember, I've been up typing. So something popped in my head. I was like, oh, wait a minute. Anyway, hemoglobin. Each molecule of hemoglobin contains 4 heme groups, right? So each molecule of hemoglobin has 4 heme groups. Right? 4 heme groups, each with 1 iron atom. Each with 1 iron atom. get up. Y'all better get up. All right. So this is where, let me see. Let me see. Is the microphone in the way? Yes, the microphone's in the way. There we go. All right. And so this right here is where your oxygen binds. This is where your oxygen binds, right? So technically, there's no such thing as the lungs and the heart functioning in separate capacity. The lungs and the heart functions together. The lungs and the heart functions together. It is a single unit. It is a single unit. The lungs and the heart functions together. And in fact, back when we released the Osiris Diabetes and Respiration book, one of the main points in that book was we had made a breakthrough. We had made a discovery in terms of our own research that you could predict metabolic disease, whether obesity, diabetes, you name it. You could predict them by the slow uncoupling of the metabolic system and the respiratory system. You could predict the oncoming metabolic disease. And on the flip side, you can repair. You can repair, well, depending on how far, gone the situation is, but you can repair in many instances metabolic disease by recoupling the respiratory system and the metabolic system. And of course, I told the story at least 675,000 times how I came to that conclusion, right? Old school, trying to figure out how the digestive system worked. And then I realized at some point the digestive system disappeared. Couldn't find it, right? The digestive system you can follow from your mouth, right, down to the stomach, duodenum, small intestine, large intestine. You can follow the whole process. Portal vein, circulatory system, boom, boom. But somehow the digestive system, the metabolic system, more specifically, right? Because there's a point where the digestive system and the metabolic system branch off, and then you have excretor, like the waste, So there's a part of the digestive system where food is shuttled to the bloodstream, and so that's all a part of metabolism. But post that part, anything that continues in the digestive tract is in the waste system. Everything of value is being shuttled over into the circulatory system. So the metabolic system shifts to the blood, from the blood to the cells, and then when you get to the cells, there's no more metabolic system, right? You now move to what's called cellular respiration. So there's a break off, right? There's a break off, and that break off is important to know that in your mind when you're framing it, because the same thing happens with the actual respiratory system, right? So the respiratory system begins, supposed to begin with your nose, right? We're technically supposed to be breathing with our nose, not necessarily our mouths, even though we can do it, right? So we have the mouth and the nose, and then we have our, windpipe, lungs. From the lungs, now we're in the circulatory system, right? And kind of similar with food, right? Once we get to the circulatory system, next stop is the actual cells, right? And so the thing that's crazy is when you get to the cells, metabolism and respiration merge into one system. They merge into one system, cellular respiration, right? So both of those things has to function together. And your body's sensors that regulate the production and monitor the existing energy pools in the body, which then translates over to your appetite. Those things also have to stay coupled. And when they're not, you have problems, right? So for instance, when your body is breaking down food at a faster rate than you can breathe, when your body's breaking down food at a faster rate than you can breathe, because remember, when you're breaking down food, your body has to couple those carbon atoms to oxygen to form CO2 to get rid of waste product. But also that CO2 serves as a balancing mechanism for the blood and the pH, right? So it has a process, even though it's a waste product, it has a value, it has a function on the way out of the body, right? But you have to be able to couple oxygen to the carbon. If not, you start to have excess carbon building up, and that is a form of hypercapnia, which bleeds into hypoxia, right? So when you have that going on, your body is kind of lethargic. Your body's kind of lethargic, right? And so now you start to lean over into the obesity side. You start to putting on excess pounds, invisible pounds that you can't tell where they're coming from, right? But it's because those two systems are uncoupled, right? And other things like VO2 max and heart resting, your heart rate and all of those other things, those numbers will start to change and trend in a nasty direction at the same time, right? So there's a lot we can tell from that process. But the magic starts here, right? The magic starts with this pigment, these proteins, right? And the beauty of this is this protein is coupled with iron, right? The piece with the magnetic, the piece with the magnetic. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy though? Because your blood is on a 120-day cycle and your blood is the piece with the magnetic. Just saying. Somebody knows what I'm saying. That's not for everybody. Somebody knows what I'm talking about though. Right? All right. So we have this. Right? We have this. I know you're like, Inky should not have this much energy after not sleeping all night. No comments. I be on them bitter. Matter of fact, I'm about to have that blue magic. It's almost time for somebody to wake up. Somebody getting ready to make me some blue magic. Somebody getting ready to make me some blue magic. All right. So this is on we need some directions. I need to make up some terms. Right? Maybe like the subway system. Maybe this is on the southbound train. Maybe this is on the southbound train. Yeah, this is on the southbound train. This is on the southbound train. This is the train that's leaving the heart, going through the body, right? When we do our daily prayers, this is going to the heart, aorta, and then to the rest of the body, right? So this blood right here is considered diamagnetic. This is diamagnetic blood, right? Oxygenated blood is diamagnetic, right? So the heart's magnetic field repels the blood. The heart's magnetic field repels the blood, right? The blood is diamagnetic, right? So it's not about just the heart being a pump. The heart is electric. The heart is magnetic. Oxygenated blood is diamagnetic, right? So yes, there's a pump, there's a twisting action, right? There's a twisting action, but also this is diamagnetic blood, right? And as it drops off oxygen, it picks up that carbon dioxide, right? It picks up that carbon dioxide, and it also picks up protons. It also moves protons. It moves with a strong proton gradient, right? Protons, hydrogen, positive hydrogen ions. Positive hydrogen ions are protons. Just two terms floating around in science just to confuse the hell out of people. That's all that is. A positive hydrogen ion, though, is a proton. A negative hydrogen ion is an electron. Yeah, it just depends on context. Depends on context of the book you're reading, but they are both the same thing. So keep that in mind always, right? All right, so this is our hemoglobin, right? This is our hemoglobin. And then we have, which is similar, very similar, but it's a little more gangster, right? It's a little more gangster. And that's what makes the magic work, right? Is we have this guy, myoglobin, right? Myoglobin. Myoglobin is the same almost as hemoglobin. The only thing is myoglobin is the stronger big brother. Myoglobin is the stronger big brother. Hemoglobin is the smarter younger brother. Hemoglobin is the Poindexter. Hemoglobin smarter. Myoglobin stronger, right? So there's a handoff. Hemoglobin gets the oxygen from the lungs and passes it off to the myoglobin. Very important handoff, right? Very important handoff. Because this is the place where most of your carbohydrates, let me be more specific. This is the spot where most of your glucose, this is where most of your glucose is going to be burned, right? Absolutely not, because there's no such thing as burning glucose. Right? But myo is muscle, right? Myo is muscle, and this is the target where most of your glucose is going to be turned into electricity, right? So it follows that this is the target where the oxygen has to go. This is the target for the oxygen because it is the primary site of glucose metabolism. It is the primary site of glucose metabolism. That is where the mitochondria are most dense, right? Outside of the heart and the brain. This is where the mitochondria are, right? And as a unit, the heart has more mitochondria. As a unit, the brain has more mitochondria. But collectively, the skeletal muscle, it's not even, the numbers are insane. The numbers are insane, right? So the main difference is here, you have one heme group instead of four. You have one heme group instead of four, right? One heme group instead of four, right? One heme group instead of four. And it's not going to be responsible for getting oxygen from the lungs. The myoglobin gets its oxygen from the hemoglobin. So the hemoglobin go through the heart, into the lungs, grab some oxygen. Well, not into the lungs, but you get the picture. Comes back out of the heart, and as it's moving through the body, the myoglobin is trying to grab as much oxygen as it can from the blood, right? Now, the better your myoglobin is at grabbing oxygen from the blood, the higher your VO2 max number goes up, right? Which is important for a lot of different health metrics. In the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to start to see a lot of doctors and hospitals begin incorporating VO2 max in regular standardized protocols and diagnostic tools because, we're having an insane crisis of metabolic disease, and VO2 max is an amazing tool to be able to figure out where you are with your metabolic health. And so there's a lot of literature popping up. Unfortunately, literature doesn't translate to institutions. That's not how that goes. There's a lot of literature, even sometimes decades go by. Sometimes a century may go by before studies become textbooks or before studies become, standardized hospital practices, right? Which gives you the advantage here because you get to grab and take hold of some of these studies and some of the information in real time as doctors are learning things, as scientists are learning things, as we are learning things, right? All right. So from here, the target is what, right? There's a nice unbroken chain of heme activity, right? So from here, it seems like I'm going fast. I gotta take these babies to the school bus. No, but we've discussed this like 6,787 times. So I feel like we kind of move. Right? So we go hemoglobin, myoglobin, and then mitochondria. Right? That is the next stop for oxygen. Right? That is the next stop for oxygen. Right? The next stop for oxygen. Primarily complex or cytochrome 4. Right? That is the main place where you need the oxygen to be at. Right? That's the main place where you need the oxygen to be setting up shop. Right? Because we got what? We got O2 plus what is that? 4, 4 electrons. 4. Something like that, right? That's how the formula goes, right? Yeah. That's how the formula goes, right? And that's going to give us our fresh water, right? That's going to give us our fresh water, right? So that electrogenesis, right? Right? Which includes not just electricity, but protonicity, right? The flow of protons right, culminates in aquagenesis, the production of fresh water in the mitochondria, and then obviously recycling ATP, right? But we're not going to make that the star of the show, right? We're not going to make that the star of the show. Now, this is also the iron chain. This is also the iron chain in terms of respiration, right? Hemoglobin, myoglobin, mitochondria. Hemoglobin, myoglobin, mitochondria. The heme chain is the iron chain. Heme works with iron. So when you get into the mitochondria, the complexes all have iron and sulfur. Iron is there for the electrical activity. Hint, hint, wink, wink. Iron is magnetic, right? But then you also have sulfur there for the antioxidant activity that sulfur brings to the table, right? So you have sulfur iron clusters or iron sulfur clusters throughout the electron transport chain, right? It's just today we focused on iron, right? Because I'm going to go through this with y'all. Then I'm going to go drop my babies at the school bus. Then I'm probably going to do a little more typing. Then I'm going to hit the nap time. Then I'm going to hit a nice little nap time. Pick my babies back up from the bus. Then I'll be ready for Medicine with Saint HJ and my partner Tanai. Right? All right. Let's get into a little bit more about iron. Yo, I ain't gonna front. I miss the old Wild Cowboy YouTube days. The Wild Cowboy YouTube days. You know, when YouTube first started, there was no such thing as there was no rules about music. There was no rules about music. Yeah, no streaming rules, no strikes for music and that. So you can have whatever you want to have playing in the background. You know what I'm saying? Like right now, I could have had the crazy playlist popping with, you know what I'm saying? Anyway. All right. So you have a couple different types of heme. I believe it's just A, B, and C. I believe it's just A, B, and C, but we're going to go to the Google Demons anyway. We're going to go to the Google Demons anyway. Let's see what the Google Demons are saying. What are the Google Demons saying? Let's see what the Google Demons say. Yep. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. But I'm not domino. All right. So yeah, A, B, and C. The reason why B is first is because B is like the main one. And so in your mind, the same thing I'm thinking. Why didn't they just name B A and then let B and C be B and C? That would have made way too much sense. And creating technical languages with isolated, niche vocabularies totally defeats the purpose if it's logical and makes sense to everybody. Niche vocabularies are designed to keep everybody else in the blind. That's why, mechanics can talk about cars amongst one another and nobody else knows what they're talking about, right? Engineers can talk about engineering with one another and nobody else knows what they're talking about. Doctors can talk about doctoring amongst one another, and nobody else knows what they're talking about, because even if they're speaking your same language, it's nuanced. It's a niche, right? So it's not designed to make sense to everybody. It's designed to keep everybody kind of dumb. Yo, shout out to the super chat. Shout out to the super chats I missed. Yeah, I missed last video. Peyton, who always keeps my lights on, and brother Snipes, you know what I'm saying? My man P, they sent me some love and I didn't see it. You know what I'm saying? And when people jump right on me after the video, like, I was like, okay, let me make sure to remember. Let me make sure to remember to salute the gods for trying to make us, keep us, you know what I mean? Keep us, get us a little sandwich or something. We're here for it. We're here for it. We are here for it. All right. So let's talk about these hemes, right? Let's talk about these hemes a little bit, right? Heme B, right? That's crazy. Yeah, let's do that. Heme B, hemoglobin and myoglobin. So it's used in the blood and the muscle tissues. The blood and the muscle tissues, right? Heme A and C Heme A and C are in the cytochromes, right? In the cytochromes, we're talking about the electron transport chain, the complexes. This marker is feeling like it's time to go. Let me see how you doing. Okay, yeah. That's how I need it, right? So heme A and C are in the cytochrome, right? So we can generalize, right, and just speak about heme, right? Hemoglobin, myoglobin, cytochromes, or mitochondria, but the heme is different. The heme is different, and the geometry is different, so the arrangement's different, the function's different, right? This right here is primarily for electrogenesis. Primarily for electrogenesis. The flow of electrons, electricity production. Right? Electricity production. Right? Boogie Down Productions will always get paid. We'll take the black song and make it better. Remember to let us into your... I don't know where that song just popped into my brain from. All right. We're going to keep it moving. Now, here's the thing. Iron is very toxic, right? So a couple of weeks ago, we did a medicine episode, and we were talking about one of these crazy herb sellers on the internet. He'll remain nameless, but he was talking about how there are some parasites that attach themselves to your liver, and they eat the blood, and it causes the iron to get stuck in your tissues. And he has a special massage that you can come to his place and he'll massage your body and the iron will go out of your tissues back into the blood, and then you'll be feeling like $1,000,000. And again, for people that don't know any better, that may sound like it's scientific, right? If you search parts of it, right? If you search the parasites, they really exist. Those parasites eating blood, actually a thing. Iron getting stuck in your tissues, never going to happen in a zillion years. Never going to happen in a zillion years. That's where he goes off to the deep end to sell his programming product, right? If iron gets stuck in your tissues, you die very quickly. You die very quickly. You get very sick very quick, off to the emergency room immediately. There's no such thing as iron building up in your tissues. Iron is highly, highly reactive and dangerous, right? So with that being said, iron has to be carefully moved throughout your body, right? So you have the transporters, right? The transporters of iron called transferrin, right? Transferrin transports iron, right? This is iron transport. Right? Now, when iron is not being used, and when iron is not being transported from one place to another, meaning it's temporarily being put in a stash, right? You got some iron in the stash, right? You kind of got, like the stash. Yeah, the stash has a name, right? So stored oxygen goes in ferritin, right? Stored oxygen goes in ferritin, right? And then you have exports, right? Import, export, right? You export ferroportin, right? Ferroportin, right? Iron porting, right? And then you have this whole process controlled by hepcidin, right? Hepcidin. So that keeps iron very tightly regulated. And your body treats this process like prisoners. Like how you see a movie, and then in the movie, like the prisoner, like you always got the $1 billion, the $1 billion criminal. You always know what's happening in the movie because you see the $1 billion criminal, he on the prison bus locked up, and he might be with one other person, right? So that person must be a co-star in the movie or the main star. He's either the main star or the co-star, and they somehow shackled up together. And then everybody else on the bus is extras. They names don't even appear in the credits. They just extras. You know what's getting ready to happen. That bus is getting ready to get blowed up, shot up, something crazy, right? So that they can escape, and then, whatever, right? But in real life, something like that happens. You got SWAT, FBI, state troops, every type of different police unit is going to converge on that scene because that's considered high risk, high danger to the population, right? Same thing happens in your body, right? If for any reason, iron somehow gets out of this system while it's being stored or moved around your body in any shape, form, or fashion, every manner of immune system is mobilizing to the set. Every manner, right? All of your white blood cells on high alert, HLA system is alerted, lymphatics, everything. It's an immediate emergency because your body has to figure out how to take care of that iron immediately, right? So they're like guarded, right? They're like guarded, but more like prisoners than anything else. Iron atoms. You think of like celebrities have their security, but celebrities tell security what to do. That's not happening with iron. Iron's getting bossed, or iron is like a prisoner, right? And they have to be under heavy lock and key because they're definitely dangerous to the population of the body's cells, your body's other, tenants, right? Microbiome, virome, fungiome, all of the different life forms and cell types that live in your body, right? So iron is very important, but iron is very dangerous. So it's strictly regulated. All right, let's get to this. That was wild. All right, let's get to this early morning prayer. Okay, hold up. Let's go for the WWW for Jada Illfigure for reposting us on Twitter. Everybody that's watching on Twitter should repost us. Reposting is very easy. Just hit the repost button, right? Let's get to this morning prayer, though. Yeah, Tika must still be asleep because otherwise, Tika would have been letting us know. Tika would have been letting us know it's prayer time. But pay attention as you watch this prayer, right? So if this is your first time with us, this is probably not a good prayer for you because we have two different videos we use, our morning prayer or our daily prayers in general, right? This one here is more instructional, right? This one is instructional. This one kind of shows the exercises that you're supposed to be doing as we go through the prayer. So you got toe raises, you got calf raises, you got squats, you got push-ups, and then we have jumping jacks, right? But we also have another one. The prayer is the same, but the emphasis is not. We have this one, which kind of gives you a, vision, a visualization of what's going on in your body as we're giving thanks for those processes. And since we got a couple new folks and we're talking about blood, right? Since we're talking about blood and we got some new folks, I think this would be the better prayer for the morning.
Inky prayer number 2. We give thanks and praise to the Most High God for the divine spark that set our cells into perpetual motion. We give thanks for the magnetism of the Most Holy, the magnetism that repels and attracts the ferry boats of light 60,000 miles every 60 seconds throughout our vessels and caves. We give thanks for the ability to drink clean water every 60 minutes, flooding the river of life. We give thanks that sugar has not covered our ferries and turned them into stone. We give thanks that darkness has not covered the riverbanks with calcium and turned them into stone. We give thanks that anger and fear have not turned our almonds bitter, turning our heart to stone. We give thanks for smooth sailing upstream through the valley of death, through the superior vena cava into the right atrium. We give thanks for smooth sailing around the heart through the corona crown, joining the vortex in the right atrium. We give thanks for the perfect black solar repeater that induces the primary electromagnetic wave, opening the mouth of the Kodesh HaKodeshim. We give thanks for the mechanical wave produced when the mouth of the Kodesh HaKodeshim closes. We give thanks to the ray wave, reflecting on the semi-lunar valves, opening a pathway to the vineyard. We give thanks for the mechanical wave produced when the lunar gate to the vineyard closes. We give thanks to the Most High God that provides the light and our breath, and the light in our breath. We give thanks for the fine olfactory system that makes our grapes ripe with light. We give thanks for the Jed pillar that provides us with a stable fleet of ferry boats to dock in our vineyard. We give thanks for smooth sailing through the pulmonary vein into the storm of the left atrium. We give thanks for the perfect black solar repeater that induces the primary electromagnetic wave, opening the mouth of the Kodesh HaKodeshim. We give thanks for the mechanical wave produced when the mouth of the Kodesh HaKodeshim closes. We give thanks to the ray wave, reflecting on the semi-lunar valves, opening a pathway into the holy royal arch of the Wa scepter. We give thanks for the mechanical wave produced when the lunar gate into the holy royal arch of the Wa scepter closes. We give thanks for the magnetism of the most holy, the magnetism that repels and attracts the ferry boats of light 60,000 miles every 60 seconds throughout our vessels and our caves. Amen.
All right, so we back to work. All right, so we back to work. Iron absorption. Iron absorption. Now, this has been an area of a lot of debates. So we probably we definitely have to go to the Google demons. We definitely have to go to the Google demons. Like, Inky, you just want to sit down after that exercise. No, listen. We got to go. We got to go to the Google demons so we can get this thing together. Right? We got to go to the Google demons because there's a time period where the holistic community. So it's a lot of divisions, right? So let me just say that the holistic community, and I'm going to say I ushered it in, right? I ushered it in on standing on the shoulders, obviously, of Dr. Sebi, but I'm going to say I ushered it in because I bring it to an audience that Sebi didn't reach. You know, before me, they was all wearing dashikis and it was different. You know, when I came into the game, it was foam posits and hard bottom shoes and, you know, just bring it to another, like a younger kind of audience, a more mainstream urban audience, I would say, a more urban audience, definitely. But there was a merger between vegan and holistic. So even now, there's a lot of people that think holistic means vegan, as if they're synonymous, but they're not. There's a lot of people who are in the holistic space, but they aren't vegan, right? They aren't vegan, but they're into the herbs and all of the other things, and they eat clean and exercise and drink, you know, zillion-dollar water and have water filters on everything and blah, 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 blah. Right. But there was a time in the history of the holistic space where there wasn't really much documentation on things. So a lot of times people don't realize that documentation comes later. You know, that's not to say that you should believe any gobbledygook that you're told, right? But documentation a lot of times comes later. So there's a time period where in the not too distant past where vegans and people in the holistic space was saying, you know, plant-based iron was better than, you know, animal products. And a lot of that conversation honestly started around Dr. Sebi, specifically with the iron, because that was like his main thing. So when I elevated Dr. Sebi to, you know, the highest level of respect, and I started saying that Dr. Sebi was the god Ogun incarnate, right? I got immediately flack from people that are into some other, you know, sciences, so to speak. As they said, Inky, you should know better. The god Ogun doesn't have anything to do with herbs and blah, 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 blah. You know, that's the wrong god to do that. And I was like, hold on. Before you get your panties into a bunch, right? Because I am Haitian, so I need you to hit your brakes, right? Because on the internet, people are always looking to make themselves look smart. And so debunking is become like a currency on the internet. Debunking somebody, that's currency. You debunk somebody, you get paid back with attention. That's how the internet works. You debunk somebody, you get repaid in attention. You know what I'm saying? So it's a form of currency, right? And you purchase attention with debunking. So everybody's kind of just watching the internet, waiting for their area of expertise to come around in a popular forum so they could like flex their muscles. And so, you know, people into the Orisha space and some of those other things, they couldn't wait. But I was like, see, you need to know more about my space before you critique, right? Before you critique, because me saying or me referencing Ogun and Dr. Sebi didn't have anything to do with the herbs. But because they weren't really familiar with the space, they assumed that, right? Dr. Sebi's early lectures, which really aren't floating around like that anymore, but his early lectures were about cellular respiration, right? And before he came up with the idea that mucus was the cause of all disease, what he was promoting was that lack of oxygen to the tissues was the cause of all disease. And then he transitioned at some point and started telling people mucus was the cause of all disease. And I kind of get the transition, you know, being a teacher myself. You know, it's kind of rough when you're talking to people and the people don't know what you're talking about all the time. So you always have to dumb it down, you know what I'm saying? And dumb it down and dumb it down and dumb it down. And so I think him coming up with the mucus thing was a way to dumb down and move from the biochemistry to a symptom. Yeah, because yeah, you're gonna get, you know, that's a sign that you having some respiratory issues, right? When you get sputum, which is what people mostly call anyway, right? But the god Ogun is the god of iron, and that was Sebi's thing early, was that, you know, people with low iron, and low iron had everything to do with, you know, how well our blood was moving and how well all of the systems that are built on top of the circulatory system function, right? So anyway, he had started this whole chaos with is that my teapot? He started the whole chaos, I think, with, people kind of debating animal protein for iron, right? Heme iron versus plant iron. And like I said early on, there was really no documentation. So if you weren't really, 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 really savvy in the conversation, you was going to take a L, because typically the heme iron people was just going to pull up the source, and the source was going to say, that heme iron was much more bioavailable, and average person would have to tap out, because at the time in the 90s and the early 2000s, you didn't really have a source that had anything where you could kind of neutralize that point. Like that was, that was it. But over the years, there's been a lot more. Now that there's been more interest, there's been more research. More interest leads to more research leads to more documentation. So with more documentation, it is a much more balanced overview on the subject. Like, Inky, that was a long time to just, because I want y'all to learn the culture. I want y'all to learn the history. The holistic and naturopathic universe before YouTube. Yeah, before YouTube. Let's go to the Google. Before Google demons existed, right? Because now we're moving into a world where our children are going to believe like, well, actually, you know what? The same way, I'm almost 50, right? I'll be 50 in 2 years, right? But I can remember when I was little, before there was like cell phones and mobile phones. Phones was attached to the wall, right? We had pay phones everywhere. Phones was attached to the wall. So Chase is 16. He'll have a similar experience. All my children, they'll have a similar experience, because they'll be able to tell their children, yeah, well, I remember when there was no such thing as AI, because AI is coming out now. You know what I'm saying? So they'll have memories depending on their age. I got a zillion children, but depending on their age, they'll have different memories of life before AI, right? But children born from, I guess the last couple of years, like toddlers and moving on to the future, those children are born into a world that AI already inhabits. So they feel like it's normal. Just like the children that are in their 20s now, a lot of them are going to jail or getting exposed for doing crazy stuff on the internet, on live streams and all that. But it's because they have a different comfort level with the internet. They have a different comfort level. They were born into a world where internet existed. We weren't born into a world where internet existed. So we have a healthy, so we'll see this next generation of babies being born into a world where AI exists, and we'll see how that works. It's going to be interesting. Hold on, where is my hot water, bro?
Rise up, get healthy, let the truth ignite. Dr. Inky always bringing dark to light. See Moss in your system.
Hold on, don't bring your naked butt on my. Yeah. stop. Yeah.
Really angry.
Nah, take it with you, champ. All right. All right. Benefits and drawbacks of heme protein. No. Why did I put heme protein? Heme iron. Right? So that never changed, right? The initial benefit, which, drove a lot of people to look for iron from meat, has not changed. Heme iron's main benefit: high bioavailability, making it easy for the body to absorb and use the non-heme iron. Non-heme iron is also it's the snub for plant-based iron, right? It's the snub, right? But it says, however, a significant drawback is that high intake of heme iron is associated with an increased risk of certain problems, including heart disease, diabetes, and cancer, particularly colorectal cancer and lung cancer, right? So when the initial conversations about heme iron or animal-based iron versus plant-based iron came out, unless you was really savvy, you didn't really know how to articulate, you was going to get hit with a source, even though the sources were outdated at the time because there was no up-to-date research. You might be speaking. Then another thing is, not only did you need to be savvy in terms of explaining it without referring to a source, but hopefully you needed to be talking to a savvy target, a savvy audience, a savvy person, because the person needs to know enough about how the human body works in order to understand what you're explaining to them. Or you're going to have to build up the person's understanding of iron cycling in the body real quick. And you're going to have to walk them through a whole bunch of information to get them to try to understand. And if you're in a debate setting, you may not have time for that. That may be a luxury you don't have. Right. So now you have, and so, yeah, it's a whole different conversation when you know that the trade-off for bioavailability, is death. Yeah, you're going to get you some more iron in, but you might get dead a little quicker though. Yeah, you might get dead way quicker depending on. So just saying. I'm not sure if you want to get your iron from that steak or not, because you might get dead a little quicker. Just saying. Just depends. Right. So these are some of the other hidden factors associated with some of the protein-driven diets, because a lot of time the protein-driven diet, meat, and if it's red meat, right? Red meat is the source of heme iron, right? Because red is, that's the reason why the meat's red, because it has blood in it, right? So the red meat, right? Red, bloody meat, right? That's the high iron. The white meat is going to be low iron. It's low heme, right? Low heme. Yeah, that is not associated with Elohim. Right? All right. So I just wanted to put that point in the books, because I know some of us are still some places and we're still wrestling, right? We're still wrestling with a variety of these conversations, right? But as long as you are not following the Pythagoras diet, which every so often, oddly enough, I get people to tell me something about Pythagoras. When I'm telling them how nutritious beans and lentils and, peas are, they telling me, yeah, but hold up. That's what, and I could tell right off the back, it's usually a chakra person. You know what I'm saying? It's usually one of them chakra folks. Because they'll start telling me, hold up though, Inky. Ain't you promoting Kemet? Pythagoras got educated in Kemet. And so Pythagoras got educated in Kemet, and Pythagoras said that nobody should eat beans. Nobody should eat beans because beans give you gas. And then I have to tell them, it's crazy that we all have smartphones, but we're not all smart. Pythagoras was not a real person. Pythagoras is as imaginary as the Easter Bunny. There's no such thing as Pythagoras. So just stop right there. No such thing as Pythagoras. And the reason why we have gas from different types of beans is two reasons. A, if we're not used to eating them. And then B, if they're not properly cooked. Right. And usually it's because we're not used to eating them consistently. Right. Because you have to give your body a chance to create a microbiome that works with beans. Right. You got to give your body a chance to develop a microbiome. That's how you change your microbiome. Every time you add something new to your diet, or something that you were eating consistently, you stop eating, you're going to change your microbiome. Your microbiome is formulated based on what you regularly eat, right? Because you have a whole bunch of different types of bacteria in there. But the ones that live off of the things that you eat regularly, those populations grow and grow and grow and get really strong and start to beat up on the other populations. So the other populations shrink and the populations that you feed, they grow. And it's a symbiotic relationship because they're going to help you with the digestion and all that, all the good magical secondary, tertiary metabolites and all of those things are going to be unlocked, right? So you need a little bit of time to develop that microbiome so your body can properly break down, get used to breaking down the beans and all that stuff, the high amount of fiber, right? Yeah, and then the beans got to be cooked. You know what I'm saying? Beans, if you hungry, like beans are not the thing to, if you hungry, you want to go lentils. Lentils is quick. 20, 30 minutes, bam, hot, fresh pot of lentils. Gucci. Beans, you're going to mess around and hit DoorDash waiting for them beans to be ready. Pay it. I'm sorry I missed your super chat, man. On the last video. That is a fact. That is a fact. That is a fact, but they was upset with me because Ogun wasn't the god of herbs. Like, And not to mention Dr. Sebi's his first his first spot, you know what I'm saying, was the Ogun Research Institute. So you look up his court papers from when he had that big court case, he was locked up like under the Ogun Research Institute. So that was another reason. Nah, I appreciate it though. I don't feel like it at all. No. I get it, but I do like to, what I'm saying, like, it's very important, those super chats. People think they're not, but they're very important. You know what I'm saying? Peace to the God. Yep. Yeah, we got some sevens in the building. Yeah. But y'all already missed like an hour. Listen, I didn't think anybody was going to be up. I thought that I was just going to go through this video and just, just slip this one in, pause. I thought I was just going to slip this one in, and then people was going to go throughout their day and check the channel and be like, oh, yeah, we missed class. Ooh, oh, he got one. So I didn't think anybody was going to be up. But my mind was winding down. Like, I've been up typing since like 11:30 last night, just typing. And I don't like to sleep in those hours because I gotta make sure everybody up for school and outfits look accordingly and book bags is properly packed and who forgot their homework and whose iPad is this and all that. You know what I'm saying? They gotta make sure ain't nobody fighting. That was I gotta get everybody ready to get them out of here for school. So it was just easier for me to hit the live to give my brain a reset. Is the debate still on? Of course it is. It's just that's not what I do over here. You know what I'm saying? Over here we got this is JED school. You know what I'm saying? This is JED school, so it's kind of organized. But no. The books is out too. Yeah, the books is out. Look, let me see. Is that it right there? Yeah. So not only is the debate still on, but the books is out. The books is out. Yeah. So go get them Beatles books. Yeah, go to Amazon and get all of the Beatles books. I appreciate it. I feel blessed. Especially if I could get y'all to wake up early in the morning and jump on a live stream about beans. Right? But, all right. So, you get iron from anything with blood in it. Right? You get iron from anything with blood in it. And then on the flip side, for the people saying, if I'm cutting down on my meat, where am I? That sounded crazy too. Cutting down on my meat. Hopefully, pray to God, we never accidentally cut down on our meat. Anyway, plant-based sources of iron, right, are lentils, beans, grains, etc. Right? And you get lower bioavailability. But with that lower bioavailability, in fact, let's see what the Google demons say about plant-based iron. Let's see what they say about plant-based iron before we move away. Right? Before we move away, let's do the same thing. So you get increased fiber and antioxidants and lower bioavailability, meaning it's absorbed less efficiently. To improve absorption, it's recommended to consume plant-rich foods with sources of vitamin C and avoid consuming them with inhibitors like coffee, tea, or calcium. Right? That's a nice little important caveat right there. Right? Because tea and coffee flush iron out of your system. Tea and coffee flush iron out of your system. So the more tea and the more coffee you have, so ladies, you just need to have that in your mind. Right? Ladies, you need to have that in your mind because ladies, they got some other stuff going on. Right? Ladies got their cycle, right? So be mindful, try to pay attention. You know, if you don't have cycle issues, then don't worry about it. But if you do, try to pay attention to what you eat the week before and the week of your cycle, right? And see if you make some changes, right? Instead of doing teas and coffees, maybe you want to do some high vitamin C fruits, right? Try to replace those teas and coffees with fruits. I'm not going to necessarily say, not fruit juices, right? Because it's a quick little jump from fruit to fruit juice, but it's very different, right? So I'd say definitely go to some fruits, right, and not fruit juices, because fruit juice is going to be mostly sugary. It's going to be super sugary, no fiber. So that's not that. That's not the same thing. But get that vitamin C in and try to cut down. Yeah. This is crazy right here. Cooking in cast iron cookware can increase the iron content of food. Okay. Let me just say for the record. Let me just say for the record. You know how they say from the neighborhood, all money is not good money? Like all money ain't good money. All iron is not good iron. Okay. So until I see some different information, I do not know of any uses that your body has for iron that you like chips of iron that you would get off of a pot. Like that might be a prime example of the Google demons bugging. That might be a hallucination right there. Yeah, because metal iron is highly toxic. Let's ask this same. Let me see right here. Let's deep dive and see what happens. Let's deep dive and see what happens. Let's see what the response is. Isn't metal iron highly toxic? Why would you suggest metal Cast iron is beneficial. Let's see what the Google demons say. Now all of a sudden, the Google is like, the user is concerned. The previous response mentioned that cooking with cast iron can be a way to increase the plant-based iron by transferring some iron into the food. However, it is also noted that excess iron overtake can be harmful. That's not what I'm saying, though. That's not what I'm saying. The current query raises a valid concern. There we go. About metal iron being toxic and asks for clarification. Explain the difference between. So where's the clarification? Where's the answers? Okay, here we go. The small amount of iron that transfers into the food is not a dangerous toxin for most people. Okay, let me ask this. Let's do this a whole nother way. Because the Google is panicking. The Google is panicking. The Google is panicking. The Google just got scared. Okay. All right. All right. All right. I'll let the Google off the hook. We ain't going to press. We ain't going to press the issue. But listen, I don't want nobody to say, yeah, I seen on Inky's video that Inky was like saying that iron shavings. I'm saying I think Google is bugging right now. I think Google is bugging. But I get it. You know what I'm saying? Because that's the same thing that they say about, that's that generally recognized as safe program, right? That I don't subscribe to. Generally recognized as safe, you got to use your discernment, right? Because that's the same thing they say about cheap vitamin B12, right? Cheap vitamin B12 is made with cyanide. And so they say the cyanide, let's see what they say right now. Let's see. I haven't asked Gemini about cyanide. Let's see what Gemini says about cyanide. But this time, what we're going to do is we're going to put this one first and see if we can, this what we're going to do. We're going to put this one first and see if we can go backwards and catch the Google demon. Or the Google demon didn't answer. Wow, it ran from us. That's crazy. All right, but let's just look at this anyway. You see what this says? Cyanide is a naturally occurring chemical found in many plants that has been used in conventional warfare and poisoning for more than 2,000 years. It is highly lethal, whether inhaled as a gas, ingested as a solid form, or absorbed through topical exposure. Now, let's change the question. Is cyanide in B12? See? Come on now. Come on now. Listen, I'm not waiting for the documentation to come out. You play games if you want to. You play games what you want to. I think it's worth spending an extra $5 right? Because when you buy a B vitamin complex or you buy some vitamin B12, the cheapest one is cyanocobalamin. That means it's cyanide binded to cobalt, right? Cyanide binded to cobalt and amino and an amine, right? That's the basic unit of that cyanocobalamin. Cyanide, cobalt for cobalt, and amine for an amino. But you can easily get, hydroxycobalamin or methylcobalamin or adenocobalamin. There's a bunch of different versions, but those cost a few more bucks. So for me, $3, $5, $6 more to get a better form is worth it just for my peace of mind. Because sometimes it's going to say whatever it's going to say now, 20, 30, 40 years, it come out something different. And then you got to look back and like, man, I got 20 years worth of cyanide poisoning. And the funny thing is, guess what? The cyanide stops that water production, right? So when we talked about complex 4, recycling the oxygen to make water and blah, 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 we put the little formula, that stops that process. And that's how it kills mitochondria. Anyway, right? So we have I think we kind of wrapped out a little bit. Yeah, I think we kind of got a little bit done. We could jump down to section 8. We could jump down to section 8. Section 8. That's crazy. Section 8. All right, so I don't think it's section 8 in the book. Is it section 8 in the book? Okay, yeah. So the conversation starts on 360. We got a lot of little co-inky dinks. Yeah, on page 360, that's where we kind of we circle back around. Actually, on page 358 is where we talk about the liver. How the liver actually regulates the whole iron cycle, right? So remember, we had the iron police, right? The transporters, the storage units, and the exporters, right? And then we had hepcidin. Hepcidin is maintained, produced, and regulated by the liver. So that's how the liver controls the iron, right? So not only is the liver managing fats, but the liver is managing iron. And that's where vitamin D and iron comes in, right? That's where vitamin D and iron comes in, right? Because the actual name, the technical name of vitamin D right? The technical name for vitamin D is cholecalciferol, right? So a lot of times in science is just a mashup. Not all the time, but sometimes it's a mashup of different things that you should know, right? And so vitamin D, the technical name for vitamin D tells you cholesterol, calcium, iron, That's what vitamin D does. Vitamin D controls cholesterol metabolism, calcium metabolism, iron metabolism, right? And so one of the ways iron is managed in your body is through calcium. Calcium goes up, iron goes down. Iron goes up, calcium goes down, right? Because typically calcium is not supposed to build up in the blood. See how that works? The blood is supposed to be rich with iron. So if it's rich with iron, it's supposed to be poor of calcium, right? Because when you get a whole bunch of calcium building up in your bloodstream, now you get hardening and atherosclerosis and all of those different things because you got too much calcium in your bloodstream. So vitamin K works with the iron to get the calcium out of the blood back into the bones where it belongs. Anyway, but vitamin D, remember, vitamin D is formed in your kidneys and your liver. Vitamin D is formed in your kidneys and your liver, right? So because vitamin D is formed there immediately, it's at the center of where calcium and iron regulation goes on, right? And the liver does what? It's the body's fat producing organ. Vitamin D is a fat soluble vitamin, right? So it just makes sense. The more you learn, the more you're able to put together the patterns of what's going on in your body, right? The biochemistry, right? The chemistry in front of the bio, right? All right. So hepcidin, right? Hepcidin is how the liver then controls the iron levels in the blood. And then we move to oxygen, right? We go back to oxygen, right? And I don't know. Do we need to write this stuff up there? Maybe we do. Maybe we do a little bit. Okay, yeah, I guess we do. What time is it? Yeah, we got a little bit of time. You know, we got to go on a book hunt. I got to find one of the heart books. You know, we have a lot of books about the heart. That is the central study. That is our central study, is the heart. Even though it doesn't seem like that. Because we are primarily always talking about, well, you know, diabetes and melanin versus diabetes. But literally, the heart of the matter, pun intended, is the heart, right? This is one of our, right? You might want to have this, but this is not the book that we're looking for.
problem with Boosie?
Boosie?
Yeah, Boosie.
This man got a cancer, but he frying pancakes in olive oil.
Okay.
You tell me something ain't wrong with that, brother. You tell me something ain't wrong with that. When Boosie at home, laying comfortably, making bologna sandwiches for his 20.
The problem with Boosie?
Boosie?
Yeah, Boosie.
This man got a cancer, but he frying pancakes in olive oil.
Okay.
You tell me something ain't wrong with that, brother. You tell me something ain't wrong with that. When Boosie at home, laying comfortably, making bologna sandwiches for his 20 kids. This man got diabetes, homie.
Okay.
But he frying funnel cakes.
Funnel cake. You know, you maybe get some avocado oil. That's a little bit more healthy for you.
Come on, homie. He the one with the diabetes. Come on, he.
Yeah, you gotta shoot up all the time.
I don't know where it is. We just gonna flash it and move on. I don't know where it is. We will flash it and move on. Right? Let me see. This is the book that I was looking for, though. Let me see. Okay, no, it's not even in this collection. I'm bugging. Okay, yeah, it's not in this collection. Let's see. Boom. I think it's definitely in this collection. Okay. Yeah, this is a whole nother collection of books. And it is this book right here. Yeah, so this book right here. Oh man, I can't find it though. It's probably on my bed. Certain high utility books, they done became like teddy bears. They done became like teddy bears. I be having them with me all the time. I be needing to have my books with me. Or it might be in the front. Hold up, let me see if it's in the front library. A bookshelf.
Rise up, get healthy, let the truth ignite. Dr. Inky always bringing dark to light. CMOS senior system.
All right. Yep, I gotta tap out. Yeah, I gotta tap out. I don't know where it is. But when I have this conversation, I like to pull up that article. Let me see if I can find that article without my book. Let's see. Is this you right here? Oh yes, this is you. Okay, boo. We lit. We lit. I don't need the book right now. Bam. We on. We on. I'm on. Right now, here's an insane coincidence. right? Which I probably have talked about 675,000 times already, but we have some new people that never heard of, they knew. So here it will be 675,000 times and one. Here is an insane coincidence before we go further. The insane coincidence is that maybe 4,000 years ago, we have the weighing of the heart ceremony, right? And the weighing of the heart ceremony measures the heart, and it uses a lever scale, right? It uses a lever scale. And that conversation was completely relegated to mythology, right? But the crazy thing is, new discoveries have been discovered about the heart's activity using the lever scale, right? So as we go into this conversation, just keep in mind that little facet, right? This was their tool. This was their tool of choice right here, right? So for John Q. Public, that may not mean anything, but for me, my eyes got really big when I seen this. This was crazy for me. This was a moment. This was a moment, right? But anyway, the discovery of magnetic behavior of hemoglobin, a beginning of bio-inorganic chemistry. 2 articles published by Pauling and Coriell almost 80 years ago described in detail the magnetic properties of oxy and deoxyhemoglobin. And this article came out when? How old is this article? Okay, so this is 2015. So yeah, this is 10 years old already. So technically, when they're saying 80 years, it's really 90 years ago. Yeah, this is 90 years ago in the 1920s. Right? Is it the 1920s? Something to that effect. It's a minute ago. It's a good minute ago. 2025. So yeah, that's somewhere in that window. Right? Somewhere in that window. And so basically with the article, we're not going to read through the whole article, but it goes to great length to explain a new, and it has it, like I said earlier, I was saying sometimes it takes decades or even more than a century for things to go from research to textbooks to institutions. Takes a long time for stuff to go from research to textbooks to institutions, right? But this was a discovery that should have changed the world, and the world's still behind, right? Because we know based on fluid dynamics and the length of the circulatory system that it was technically impossibility for the heart to be solely responsible for pumping blood through the whole system, especially going 60,000 miles in a minute. Like that just sounds insane, right? But this discovery should have changed the world in terms of that understanding, at least, right? Because now we have a understanding that there's something else at play in terms of circulation, right? You have oxyhemoglobin, right? Oxyhemoglobin, which is oxygenated blood, right? That's the fresh blood coming out of the heart. And then you have, there's no way I'm fitting deoxygenated blood right in that little space, right? So we're going to have to, we're going to do it like this. We're going to go O2 blood versus CO2 blood. That's how we're going to do that. Yeah, that's how we're going to do that. So I can fit that up there, right? So O2 blood is oxygenated. CO2 blood is deoxygenated, right? This blood is diamagnetic. This blood is paramagnetic, right? So diamagnetic blood is repelled by magnetic fields. And your heart has a very strong magnetic field. So the magnetism of the heart alone helps to have a strong ejection out of the heart. Helps to have a strong ejection out of the heart. Once those blood cells are oxygenated, they want to go. They want to go. They want to get right in the highway and go into the fast lane. Right? When there's the exchange between the hemoglobin and myoglobin, and the blood cells dump off their oxygen, pick up CO2, now they become paramagnetic. Paramagnetic means they are attracted to magnetism. They are attracted to magnetism. So now the fact that they become paramagnetic immediately helps pull that blood back to the heart. Helps to pull that blood back to the heart, and then we keep the cycle going. Respect the healer in the melanin versus diabetes movement, of which you, sir, are a big part. So I'll be expecting you to hit my phone sooner or later. Well, sooner than later. So you could get, we gotta get you tested. You've been studying. We gotta get, yeah. I'm putting the full court press on you and Kyle and Paul and yeah. It's time to start taking some tests. It's time to start taking some tests. Yeah, it's time to start taking some tests before the girls pass y'all, right? Because Tika and Lauren and some girls, the ladies might pass the fellas. Just saying. All right. Let's see what we have here. Okay. So in the book, we kind of go. In the book, we kind of go. There's a lot more details. Right? Oxygen is paramagnetic. Yes, as a molecule, because O2 has 2 unpaired electrons. This makes it attracted to magnetic fields. This is why liquid oxygen can be visibly pulled by magnets. But blood is diamagnetic, even though oxygen is paramagnetic. Whole blood, especially when oxygenated, becomes diamagnetic. Why? Because O2 in the air or dissolved alone is paramagnetic with unpaired electrons. When O2 binds to hemoglobin, the electrons are paired. So binding the oxygen in the protein pairs the electrons, right? In the lungs, oxygen binds to iron in the hemoglobin. This alters each iron atom's electron configuration.
I love you, Dad.
I love you too, boy.
Love you, Dad.
All right, so that is the first group. That is the first group to the school bus. We good though. We got a little while before the second group got to go. All right. So anyway, oxygen binding to the proteins pairs the electrons. And so that's where we get the diamagnetic behavior, right? When they bind to the hemoglobin, it alters the electron configuration. The unpaired electrons are paired, which quenches the magnetic pull. The oxygen hemoglobin becomes diamagnetic, right? Diamagnetism, paired electrons are repelled by magnetic fields. We are on page 361. Most biological tissues, water, proteins, fat, cells are diamagnetic by default. They resist magnetic fields slightly. This is a mild stabilizing property. Oxygenated blood with its paired electrons inherit this diamagnetism. O2 enters as paramagnetic, but when it joins the body, it is neutralized, pacified. Got it. What's happening on my phone? Okay, I love you too. All right. Deoxygenated blood becomes paramagnetic. When hemoglobin releases O2 and picks up CO2, hemoglobin switches to the T state. CO2 is carried as carbaminohemoglobin. Carbaminohemoglobin with bicarbonate in the plasma. Iron in heme shifts its electronic state. CO2 also acidifies the environment, shifting the proton gradient. All of this basically restores the unpaired electrons. So it restores the magnetic susceptibility and makes the blood paramagnetic again, right? So basically, you kind of have a binary electric switch. You have a binary electric switch, zeros and ones, driven by electron configuration, or, how electrons are behaving, right? So when the electrons are paired, the blood is diamagnetic. When they're unpaired, it becomes paramagnetic, right? Very interesting. Oh, yeah. So we good. Yeah, we good. We almost at the end. Yeah. We almost at the end. See, I got that. Yeah, I didn't think I was going to have enough time to finish this up. We almost at the end. We good. All right. So fat conversion and muscle. Fat conversion and muscle. Right? This whole conversation comes down to metabolism. Remember, respiration and metabolism join up in the cells. Typically, skeletal muscle. Right? Particularly skeletal muscle, because that's where you have the most mitochondria. And they need to produce electricity. They need to produce electricity, right? So you have the oxygen cycling around the system, following the iron, following the magnetism. The magnetism is driven towards production of electricity, right? Very simple. Electricity and magnetism as the driving forces of human life, right? Magnetism is going to move the oxygen. The oxygen is going to be a driver for the production of electricity. Now, pay attention to this part, because here's the thing. A lot of times, like somebody asked me about the debate earlier, a lot of times the problem with science is it's a dead science. So a dead science just studies the chemical portion. It doesn't study the electricity, the magnetism, the light, and their interactions. And when those things come into question, they're treated as secondary or tertiary side effects that just so happen to be happening instead of the main thing. And putting chemicals in their place. Chemicals are only there as facilitators for the electric, the magnetic, and the light show in the body, right? Light, electricity, magnetism, primary driving forces, right? So if we focus just on iron, if we focus just on oxygen, we miss everything else that's happening, right? We miss everything else that's happening. And if we miss the magnetism and the relationship of magnetism to electricity, we miss our relationship to the environment, right? Because it is a coupled system. We don't have a respiratory system and a metabolism without photosynthesis. We don't have a respiratory system and a metabolism without photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is the production of our carbohydrates and fats, right? And our carbohydrates and fats serve as the feed for the animal stuff that we eat, right? So everything is based on photosynthesis, right? And so when we consume the foods, whether it's the animals or it's the plants or both, that metabolism has to be coupled with our respiration, period. Because whether you're dealing with protein, fats, or carbohydrates, your body still has to metabolize those things, break them down, and get rid of that CO2. That CO2 goes back to fuel more photosynthesis, right? The process of photosynthesis releases the oxygen that we have to breathe in order to break down the carbohydrates and fats that the plants made while getting rid of the oxygen. Totally interdependent systems, right? So we have to get that part. And that part is driven by light, right? So just even on the outset, before getting to anything complicated, it's light driving electricity and magnetism, and then it's electricity and magnetism driving the metabolism of the things formed by the light, and right? All right, so this is how we get back around to fat conversion, right? Fat loss, right? Fat metabolism, right? We have our little photosynthesis conversation. Right? We have our photosynthesis conversation, right? I think that's the best way to explain oxygen, exercise, and fat metabolism, right? And I need to tell it to y'all so many times that you get sick of it. Then at that point, I'll know you memorized it, right? But photosynthesis is carbohydrates, right? A carbon unit attached to a water unit, right? A carbon unit attached to a water unit, right? In order to make longer lasting stored energy, right? Nature came up with removing the oxygen, right? And just doing long chains of CH2. That's what your fats are. Long chains of CH2. Yeah, they got a little oxygen here and there sprinkled in, but typically you just got carbons, long chains of carbons with hydrogens attached. Like that, right? So you got long chains of CH2, right? And in order for your body to begin to metabolize this, you got to add oxygen back in. You got to add oxygen back in. You got to turn all of this stuff to water in your body, right? Simplification, you know what I'm saying? Because we've already spent 10 weeks breaking down the details of beta oxidation and blah, 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 right? So yes, that's a simplification, but it works for the stand-in. How do we increase our oxygen and our oxygen metabolism and our oxygen efficiency? Working the skeletal muscles, right? The sites where myoglobin is at and all of those good things. So how do we do that? Well, we make sure we get in our prayers at least 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times a day, right? So that way, if you don't get to the gym, you do have at least 3 or 4 times throughout the day where you know you push that blood down into the muscles of the feet, down into the legs, circulated that blood around to get as much oxygen around, to get as much electricity, which frees up your body's ability to utilize fatty acids, right? And then even though we're having these conversations, you don't listen to me. No, I'm going to tell you the right thing, even if I do the wrong thing. I'm going to tell you the right thing, even if I do the wrong thing, right? Because that's where the hypocrisy of that kind of teacher-student or parent-child relationship comes in, right? You tell your child, don't smoke cigarettes while you standing right there having a cigarette, because this is wrong, right? So like right now, I haven't slept all night. It is not healthy to mess up your circadian rhythm and not get your sleep. But sometimes you got to break a few eggs to make an omelet. So I'm up. I'm up. Right? All right. Now we're going to do this, and then this is probably going to be it. Right? Both of these groups can kind of lead to some fat loss. Both of these groups can kind of lead to some fat loss, but there's some nuanced differences, right? So we have leptin. Who else we got? We got leptin. We got cortisol. We got leptin, cortisol, and then we got right. So they in a love triangle. Leptin, cortisol, and estrogen is in a love triangle, right? A deadly love triangle too. Yeah, it's a deadly, not for them, for you. That is a deadly love triangle right there, right? Then on the flip side, you have insulin. Okay, this marker is seen better days too. Melanin concentrating hormone and testosterone, right? And they're having a bromance, right? They're having a bromance, right? Either one of these groups can actually lead to you losing weight, right? I just want to make a distinction. Either one of these groups can dominate your body and lead you to losing weight, right? The thing is, if this group is dominating your chemistry, you're going to primarily be losing muscle and collagen, right? So that's not what you want to do for longevity, right? If you let these guys dominate, you're going to be losing muscle and collagen, right? If you let these guys dominate, insulin, melanin concentrating hormone, and testosterone, you will primarily have a fast metabolism for fat. Your body will not store large amounts of fat. Now, what I mean by letting insulin dominate, right? I don't mean having diabetes. I don't mean having insulin building up in the blood, right? What I mean is insulin being efficiently used. So we're talking about zero insulin resistance. If you have insulin resistance, you don't have a high insulin metabolism, right? Your insulin is not getting to its targets. Your targets are not listening to the insulin if it's getting there, right? So when you have your insulin coupled to melanin concentrating hormone and testosterone, typically what that means is you also have autophagy running. You also have growth hormone production, right? We're just going to do that, right? Because those two things are facilitated here, right? And when you have both of these things going on, these things will make sure you have zero insulin resistance. But people who typically have, it's never an exact, but people who typically have insulin resistance have almost no autophagy production and almost no growth hormone production, right? Melanin concentrating hormone, when it gets to a high threshold, is going to kick into ghrelin and growth hormone. Also autophagy. If you don't respond fast enough, your body will start recycling its own proteins, right? So that is week 11, day 1. Look at Tika coming in the class. She done missed her prayer with us. She done missed her prayer with us and everything. Let's go. Shout out for the super chats. Let's go, man. Listen, if I ever miss super chats, just know I'm humble and grateful and super appreciative. But now I'm out of here so I could get these babies onto the school bus.
Rise up, get healthy, let the truth ignite. Dr. Inky always bringing dark to light. CMOS senior system.
The problem with Boosie.
Boosie?
Yeah, Boosie.
This man got a cancer, but he frying pancakes in olive oil, homie.
Okay.
You tell me something ain't wrong with that, brother. You tell me something ain't wrong with that. When Boosie at home, laying comfortably, making bologna sandwiches for his 20 kids. This man got diabetes, homie.
Okay.
But he frying funnel cakes.
Funnel cake. You know, you maybe get some avocado oil. That's a little bit more healthy for you.
Come on, homie. You the one with the diabetes. Come on, eat.
This is why you have to go to Amazon and get the book, Rich Abs, Poor Abs, now.